Thank you for welcoming me to San Francisco and to your forum. I was very happy to come here, particularly because I shall be receiving an award in the name of Václav Havel. He was one of our greatest friends, although I never met him. He was one of our great friends throughout all the years of our hardship, the long road to freedom, as you say. The long road to freedom is as long as you want it to be. If you free yourself first, you have always been free. But if you think of freedom as what you're going to achieve through the institutions of your country, then you have to go much further. We start by freeing ourselves, as Václav Havel has taught us, by living in truth. And in this way, we start up the institutions which will enable all of our people to live in truth. Václav Havel was a good friend to us during the years when we were never able to contact one another. I heard of what he was doing through the radio, through occasional newspapers that got through to me. The long road to freedom is one where you need friends. And now that we have started a different road to freedom, we need our friends more than ever. I say a different road because previously we had been trying to start to democratize our nation. And now that we have the chance to really build up democratic institutions, we need our friends more than ever. We need friends who are honest, who can look at the situation and see it for what it is, and who can give us the kind of help we need. We need to free up our people from not just from oppression, but from their own fears and from their own hatreds. I understand that there are many human rights workers present at this meeting. And I would like to look at human rights in a rather different way from that in which it has been seen for a long time. It's not enough just to see where human rights violations are taking place and to draw attention to those violations. We want to know what can be done to stop making people commit human rights violations. This is what will help us most in our road to freedom. Not just to be able to prevent human rights violations through the rule of law, on which we put a lot of emphasis and value, but by making people understand why they should not engage in the violation of human rights. How do we make people understand this? How do we make people feel that they should not be committing human rights violations? Do they understand that they are actually violating the rights of human beings when they deprive people of their dignity, when they deprive people of their right to freedom and of their right to live in harmony with their neighbors? So if you want to be with us along this new and longer road to freedom, we would like you to address those issues. How do we stop people from committing human rights? And that goes back to another question. Why do people commit violations of human rights? Why is it? Is it because they're unaware of what they are doing? Or is it because they are unaware that what they are doing is just destroying their own human dignity as well as that of others? This would be what I would like as a new human rights agenda for our country. There are still many human rights violations going on in Burma, as there are still conflicts going on in my country. But as we try to put a stop to these conflicts, we have to get at the root of the matter. And this is where I would like all of you to help us. All of us who have been engaged in the fight for freedom, in the fight against human rights violations, must have thought very deeply about these matters. And from this thought, I would like you to find the answers to how we can put a stop to human rights violations. Václav Havel talked about empowering the powerless and about teaching those who have lived in falsehood to live in truth. But how do we really go about it? It is not as simple as all that. Not all of us are Václav Havels. Not all of us have his intellectual strength or his moral strength. Without such strengths, it is difficult for ordinary people, ordinary soldiers, because earlier we were hearing about what military dictatorship does to nations. Why is it that ordinary soldiers who are born from our own people become cruel to us? What makes them turn into human rights violators? This is the question that I would like answered. I do not want our people, to whichever force they may belong, to be labeled as those who are irredeemable. Surely we were not born to violate human rights. We were all born human beings, unaware of our human dignity, because babies are not aware of their dignity, but with the instincts and emotions which should make us sensitive to the emotions of others. Why are we not able to relate to our fellow human beings to the extent that we would not wish to hurt them in any way? We would not wish to hurt them physically or mentally or spiritually. We should not wish to hurt our fellow human beings. This is why I am a great admirer of people like Gandhi, who also walked the long road to freedom and who managed to walk it without hatred. Unless we can walk this road without hatred, what we find at the end may not be what we had imagined. I do not believe that means can be separated from ends. The means that you use to achieve your ends will, in the end, color those very ends themselves. If we are to march along the road to freedom, full of hatred and full of the instincts of violence, what we find at the end of the road will not be freedom, but another kind of prison, a prison that we have constructed for ourselves through our own feelings of hatred and violence. So this title actually was not picked by me. It was picked for me, The Long Road to Freedom. This is not what I would have chosen to talk about at this forum. I would have wished to talk about Václav Havel, about what he did for Burma and for other countries and peoples suffering from lack of freedom, suffering from the inability to live in truth. But as I was asked to speak of the long road to freedom, I have to think of freedom as what it means to me. Freedom to me means the right to live in peace with my conscience. And even if I am deprived of my physical freedom, the ability to live in peace with my conscience would make me free, would keep me free. We have to create a society where everybody would be able to live in peace with his or her conscience. And this would not be possible if there are laws that will punish them for so doing. This is why we work to free all prisoners of conscience. To this day, there remain prisoners of conscience in my country. Not as many as there were last year, certainly not as many as there were 10 years ago. But still, there are prisoners of conscience in our country. If we want them to be free, we must create a society where they can live in peace with their conscience. And if you would like to help us, we would like you to help us to find the answers to why it is so difficult for human beings to allow others to live in peace with their conscience. Bigotry, prejudice, unjust laws, oppression, all these strike at the root of a free society, which begins with freedom of the spirit. I have always said that our revolution in Burma must be a revolution of the spirit. Unless we can change our attitudes, we will not really be able to change our society. It is not enough to turn a military regime into a civilian government. We have to turn ourselves into people fit to uphold a society where we do not need dictators to tell us what to do, and where we will not allow dictators to tell us what to do. Sometimes we destroy our own freedom because it is the easy option. It is the easy option to listen instead of to struggle. It is the easy option to make concessions rather than to stand up for what you know is right. In this way, we start by destroying our own freedom. When we talk about dictatorships coming to power, we have to look into how and why they managed to come into power. I have always said that all the people in our country are responsible for what we are, even if each to a very small extent. If we want to be free people, we must be prepared to take responsibility for ourselves. But at the same time, I think we have the right to ask for help and support from our friends. That is what friends are for. And true friends are the ones who will help us to keep to the right path, who will help us not to take the easy option, who will help us not to drown ourselves in hatred or disillusionment or sorrow or hopelessness. True friends are those who will help us to stand up every time we fall down on the long road to freedom. And again, Václav Havel helped us. He helped me, he helped others like me. He helped in practical ways, such as allowing many of our dissidents to settle in Czechoslovakia, and by helping our organizations to work for the freedom of political prisoners in my country. He helped us in other ways, sometimes just by letting us know that he had not forgotten us. The last letter he wrote to me arrived only after his death. He was already very ill, but in his letter, his concern was only for me, for us in Burma. He was very aware of the fact that we were about to embark on the most difficult part of our road to freedom. We had started to change our country. We had been given the opportunity to change our country. And that is when we come to the most difficult part. We have to choose the right methods. The moment you are freer, there are more choices open to you. And whether or not you make the right ones is your responsibility. The freer you are, the greater your responsibility, the more difficult to keep to the right path. And he was very aware of this. And he let me know that he was aware of this, and he was with me as I go forward with my people towards the goal that seems so near, but may prove yet to be far if we make the wrong choices. So freedom is choice, and the road to freedom is the road to a society in which we make our own choices and in which we assume responsibility for our own choices. I would like you to help us to make the right choices, choices which are not rooted in hatred or resentment or fear, choices which are rooted in belief in human beings, in a total commitment to the dignity of each and every human being, choices that are rooted in hope, hope that must be kept alive through endeavor and through confidence in our ability to change the world in which we live. I have not talked much about what we went through in the past. I think most of you know what Burma went through and what other countries under dictatorships went through. I just want you to know that we are aware of the problems that lie ahead in the future. But my colleagues in the National League for Democracy, our comrades in other forces working for democracy, and our people are prepared to meet the challenges that await us as we keep going forward. The road to freedom never comes to an end. it does not end anywhere. Otherwise, it would not be a road to freedom. If the road to freedom were to end with a gate, or even a house, it has come to an end. So I think you will all agree that freedom should never come to an end, and that our struggle for freedom should never come to an end. And it can never come to an end because ultimately there will always be the struggle to free ourselves from our own human weaknesses. And that is the longest road to freedom that each one of us has to take for herself or himself. Much more difficult than freeing ourselves from chains or from oppression by other people. And as a member of a free society, the kind of free society that we hope to establish in our country, I hope that you, our friends, will be with us as we strive to free ourselves from our own human weaknesses at the same time as we strive to free our country from the legacy of fear and dictatorship. Thank you.